Welcome to this week's episode of The Climate Impact, where we bring you the latest in local weather and environmental stories from WTOL 11's team of reporters and meteorologists. From Lake Erie water quality and forecast outlooks to global climate trends, we have you covered for all your climate stories that impact you and your community.
Right now, there is a tsunami warning in effect off of the coast of California after a major earthquake rocked the state's coastline. Officials say it could be felt from Oregon to San Francisco. Meteorologist John Birchfield joins us. John, California is known for earthquakes, but are tsunami risks common?
Yeah, not all earthquakes cause tsunamis, Kaylee, but this was a very significant earthquake, a 7.0 magnitude, and over 30 aftershock reverberations were felt, and this occurred just 40 miles off the northern California coast. So if you're not familiar with what a tsunami is, it is essentially a series of strong waves due to the displacement of ocean water. If you think about it in terms of a bathtub, if you push down the water on one side, it's going to come up on the other side. That's what happens during a tsunami. Earthquakes are the primary causes of tsunamis, but also other weather phenomena, including landslides, can cause them. Coastal flooding and strong, powerful currents often impacts of tsunamis. 80% are caused by earthquakes, but as I mentioned, not all earthquakes, more so the shallow ones that are not too far below the surface, cause tsunamis, and an earthquake must be near the ocean floor, generally within about a mile to cause a tsunami. They can go incredibly fast with top speeds approaching 500 miles per hour or as fast as jet planes, and they're also incredibly large. The wavelength, or the measure from one peak to another, can be hundreds of miles measured from crest to crest. Now, subsequently, those tsunami warnings have been lifted, but we're still going to keep a close eye on the impacts and some of the reverberations or the aftershocks that are still being felt as a result of that magnitude 7 earthquake.
Laura Sandlin shows us some of the preparation that has gone into getting the roads ready for this winter alert.
It's no surprise, winter is here. And with it, gray skies and cold temperatures. And when conditions are just right,
slick road conditions, that's the biggest thing.
The Ohio Department of Transportation warns winter weather, like snow and rain, can quickly create conditions that pose a threat to drivers. Something Transportation Manager Brian Drew says ODOT prepares for every year.
The crews come in, we get all of our trucks checked over before every storm, make sure all the fluids are topped off, all the lights are working, all that kind of stuff.
ODOT Highway Technician Joshua Dowdy says preparations start inside.
It's just sitting down and looking at the weather forecast very detailedly and seeing what's going to be coming in, when it's going to be coming in, and then we'll basically make a plan of action from there.
Then it's all about what's happening outside. Rain, snow, or sleet, Dowdy says the plan changes with the conditions.
If it looks like we're going to get just snow coming in and temperature's going to be right, we'll go out and we'll pre-treat all of our roadways so that we've got that little bit of extra window for when it does initially start rolling in.
For Lucas County, 13 ODOT crews work 12-hour rotating shifts, working to stay ahead of the weather.
That way we've got some kind of treatment on the road so that the snow and ice doesn't start to adhere to the road right away while we're actually making our rounds.
And when the storm stops, Dowdy says crews have about 2 hours to get the roads back to normal.
And we'll continue that rhythm until the event is over with and all our roads are clean, clear, and back up to traveling speeds.
Laura Sandlin with that report. Crews say they will stay out there until the roads are cleared, and ODOT also asks drivers to be aware and to slow down if you see those green flashing lights when a plow is out there trying to get the job done.
Welcome to this week's WTOL 11 Weather Impact. I'm meteorologist Matt Willoughby, and this week we are breaking down at least something that comes to an end around November and December. And this time around, we are recapping at least the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. So we have seen quite the historic hurricane season so far, and we're going to recap everything we saw within the past several months throughout the summer months and even a late fall month. So as you started off for you, that Atlantic season, we saw quite the bit of named storms out there, but we didn't complete the full list. We saw several Category 4 and even 5 hurricanes and several amounts of 3 and 2 hurricane status. So we definitely did saw a busy and active season, but how busy are we talking? Well, we did see the forecast of 17 to 24 named storms. We ended up seeing 18 named storms, and hurricanes was right around 8 to 13. We saw 11 hurricanes, and even major hurricanes was between 4 and 7. We did end up seeing 5 major hurricanes this past season. Now, as you look at one of those hurricanes, Hurricane Beryl, that underwent rapid intensification, that started as a Category 3 hurricane right on June 30th, but eventually made its way as a Category 5 hurricane just a day later, around 10:50 on July 1st. So this was one hurricane that did undergo rapid intensification. But what about another one? We also are breaking down Hurricane Milton that definitely went another stage of rapid intensification. So started as a Category 1 hurricane, but eventually made its way actually into a Category 5 hurricane within about 9 hours. So this also underwent rapid intensification due to those warm Gulf waters we did see this past year. Now we break down some of those major hurricanes that did reach U.S. landfall. We have a Hurricane Francine as well, with those max sustained winds right at 76 miles per hour. We saw peak wind gusts right at 105 miles per hour. That did make landfall in St. Mary's Parish in Louisiana as a Category 2 hurricane. Some areas brought up to 8 to 10 inches of rainfall with this hurricane that did make landfall into Louisiana. One of the more major and historic ones we did see was Hurricane Helene, which is a Category 4 hurricane at landfall. It had max sustained winds out of 140 miles per hour, and those peak wind gusts were 160 miles per hour. That made landfall in Perry, Florida. And not only did you see impacts in Florida, but also into the Carolinas as well, where they saw historic once-in-a-lifetime flooding with over 200 deaths, sadly, with this historic hurricane that we did see this past year. We have one more, Elisa, for you, and we did break this down. When we talk about those warmer waters and stronger storms we do typically see. So when it comes to this, that rapid intensification with climate change happening, well, we've seen about a 16 increase a mile per hour with Helene, Beryl, and Milton. So with that rapid intensification, did see instead of a Category 3 hurricane, well, Helene was a Category 4 hurricane. Same case with Beryl and Milton. It would have been a Category 4 hurricane, but ended up being a Category 5 hurricane due to climate change. So this has been one of the main factors that has led to rapid intensification with a lot of these hurricanes we have seen this past year. As you look at those tropical cyclones even more, though, pretty much breaking down what rapid intensification was, and you did hear it a lot with a lot of these hurricanes that were named. Well, that means when the wind speeds increase with at least 35 miles per hour within 24 hours, that it basically is the sum up of rapid intensification. So when we break it down even more, about 79% of major tropical cyclones undergo rapid intensification, and that is projected to increase as we go throughout the next several years if nothing is done due to climate change. To break it down even more with hurricanes and climate change, and what we know, well, those warmer waters are fueling more of those hurricanes happening, which leads to a heavier rain and even higher storm surge with a lot of these hurricanes and tropical cyclones that we do see. So this is one of the main factors that if we see those warmer waters, that means more impacts and more damaging to structures along those coastal areas we all love to go and vacation to. So that's something we definitely have to pay attention to over the next several years. And as you look at that monthly average and pretty much the frequency of tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Ocean, well, we typically see less than one around May, June. We start to really get into that more increased peak throughout July. And those peak months are August, September, and October, where even in September, we can see up to 6 named storms, that is, throughout the month. And of course, back into November and December, which we're in the month of December now, we see less than one named hurricane. So pretty much that's when we can call it a quits of this hurricane season and likely recap what we've so far seen this year. Now, I was breaking down for you that 2024 tropical cyclone. Well, we started off a little busy, especially into the June and July months, where we saw Hurricane Beryl, which was a dangerous hurricane that did make landfall into the U.S. And then we trailed off a little bit into the middle of July and early August. But eventually we saw Debbie and Ernesto. Ernesto was in fact a Category 2 hurricane. And likely we saw a trend of some pretty busy times ahead as we've gone into September, where we saw about like 6 to 7 named storms moving from Francine. Now, a lot of these didn't necessarily make landfall within the U.S., but it was surely busy when it came to the tropics, where we saw Francine, which was a Category 2 hurricane. Of course, the historic one, Helene. We also saw Gordon, which was a tropical storm. Isaac, Joyce, Kirk, Leslie, and Milton was all within a month time span. So this is where we saw a busy time, and it didn't end there. We also saw some busy times into October and even November, where we saw Nadine, Oscar, Patty, Raphael, which was stayed out to sea, was a Category 3 and 4, but even Sarah. So we saw some surges really into those hurricane seasons when we saw those warmer temperatures throughout the South and throughout the Atlantic, where we saw that surge of tropical cyclones pretty much once a week. So this is something that we've been breaking down, and I can tell you this was really one of those historic years that we have seen as far as hurricanes go. And we'll continue to track this out as we go towards the next year, and we start up our hurricane season again near June and even May sometimes. So we'll likely keep an eye on that as we go towards the 2025 tropical season ahead. Thanks for watching this week's WTOL 11 Weather Impact. I'm meteorologist Matt Willoughby.
Some of us here in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan woke up to some snow on Tuesday morning. Now, nothing compared to what folks in Cleveland, Erie, Pennsylvania, and Buffalo, New York have seen, not only for today, but for the past several days, including over Thanksgiving holiday travel. Now, what's the reasoning behind this? This is called lake effect snow. So us here in Toledo and the surrounding area, we're on the western side of the lake, whereas those near Cleveland, Erie, and Buffalo, they're located on the eastern side of Lake Erie. Now, the reason they see all the snow compared to us is because of the way that the wind shifts, but also we have warm water over Lake Erie, but also a cold land. So watch this. As it pushes on over, you have that layer of warm water underneath, but then you have cold air on top of it. As that cold air pushes over the warm water, that's when we start to see all that snow pile on up. And just picture Cleveland, Erie, and also parts of Buffalo just blanketed with all that snow. Not only inches, but also feet of snow. And as far as those snow totals go, just depends on where you are. Of course, the further east you are, some places seeing inches, we're talking 12, 15, 25, 40, 50 inches of snow in some places. But us here in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan have seen just a little bit in comparison. But here's some of the big numbers I really want to showcase real quick. Places in New York, how about that? 56.5 inches of snow. Springville, New York, 38 inches. Parts of Ohio, 37 inches. Other parts of Ohio, over 2 feet of snow. North Madison, Ohio, just around a foot of snow. But us here in Toledo, we have seen still just a trace, and that does include the snow that we did see this morning. So just a little bit of snow accumulation for us, but nothing compared to folks in northeastern Ohio, parts of Pennsylvania, and also parts of New York.
After a very mild fall season, we've finally felt some more frequent tastes of winter towards the tail end of November and the start of December thus far. Meteorologist John Birchfield here with this week's edition of the Climate Friday newsletter. We're going to be talking about winter striking early, not just here at home, but for a good portion of the country. From extreme cold to lake effect snow, we have felt quite the gambit of winter weather this week and likely to continue into the coming weeks. So we're going to break down the numbers behind how much snow folks in New England have seen and even out in eastern Ohio as a result of that lake effect, and also our temperatures here at home and what you can expect going forward into the middle of December. If you're not already subscribed to the Climate Friday newsletter, head to WTOL.com/email for new content each and every Friday straight to your inbox. Let's start things off by talking about the lake effect snow machine that has certainly been turned on into full gear over the last week to week and a half. This map shows you snow depth across the Great Lakes region. Those lighter blue colors indicate lighter amounts of snow, and the purple colors you can see on the color key indicate 1 to even 2 feet of snow accumulation, and that snow depth has really piled up. You'll notice mainly downwind of the Great Lakes. There's Lake Michigan, and just to the east of Lake Michigan, some heavy snowfall also coming in off eastern Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Over the last week to week and a half, persistent bands of lake effect snow have resulted from the colder air filtering in over the relatively mild Great Lakes. Widespread snow amounts in western Michigan have amounted to 3 to 6 inches of snow depth, and that is just what's remaining on the ground. Higher amounts have occurred in some of those snow squalls coming in off of Lake Michigan, Benton Harbor back towards Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids. Some of those cities in West Michigan do frequently see lake effect snow. Now, the more impressive snowfall totals have actually occurred in our Lake Erie, just not so much on the western side, more along the lines of eastern Lake Erie. Whenever the wind blows right along the fetch of Lake Erie, you get some substantial snowfall totals, and some of those impressive amounts to the east of Cleveland have amounted to 1 to 2 feet. Up towards Erie, Pennsylvania and Buffalo, New York, there have been some incredible snowfall totals impacting the Buffalo Bills game as well. And coming in off Lake Ontario, some incredible snowfall amounts in the ballpark of 2 to 3 feet, and that is just the snow depth, with isolated amounts that were higher, and some of that has been compacted or pressed down or melted away. Watertown is one city that really sees some heavy frequent lake effect snow, not only off Lake Ontario, but sometimes we get what is known as a lake connection, or when that wind blows from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, and you get the feedback from both of those Great Lakes, amounting to some of those higher totals shown in pink there on the snowfall map. So here's some of the official snowfall reports from that New York lake effect snow event. There at the bottom, you'll see Bills Stadium in Orchard Park received 27.6 inches of snowfall, certainly making for a snow globe game versus the 49ers. Copenhagen takes the cake with 65 inches of snow accumulation. Watertown, which I mentioned on the map, that is a town that is very familiar with lake effect snow. Dunkirk as well gets frequent lake effect. Orchard Park and the city of Buffalo itself, still over a foot of snow accumulation. The city of Buffalo, where that weather observation site, not quite as prime of a lake effect destination as, say, Orchard Park. Now, in the Buckeye State, lake effect snow has also impacted areas near and east of Cleveland. Saybrook with over 5 feet of snowfall, 61.7 inches of accumulation. Geneva with 49.0, over 4 feet of accumulation. North Madison, 45 inches. Painesville, over 3 feet. And Concord, just shy of 3 feet. And there's going to be more to come with the intrusion of some Arctic air in the wake of a cold front. We expect lake effect snow through the start of the weekend, at least, with that cold air coming in off the Great Lakes. So when do we normally see some snowfall? Well, Toledo has finally gotten a little bit of a taste of winter after relatively devoid snowfall the last few Decembers. We finally have picked up a little bit. Now, this is our normal winter snowfall. During December, we typically average a little over half a foot of snowfall. So while we do sometimes see that Christmas snow, it may not be quite as common as you think. Coming up in future editions of the Climate Friday newsletter, we are going to talk those white Christmas chances. January is the snowiest month of the calendar year, with an average snowfall a little over 1 foot. And into February, we typically average 10.3 inches of accumulation, making it the second snowiest month of the year. What about last year? How did snowfall fare from the winter of 23 to 24? December was tied for the least snowy on record, with just a trace of accumulation. In other words, not even enough to measure with a ruler. just a few flakes. January did finally try to eat away at that deficit with 8 inches of snow. It was still a below average January, keep in mind. And then February, another record-setting month with only half an inch of snow accumulation. Now, normally we can expect some colder temperatures and more frequent snowfall as we round the corner towards the official start of winter in a couple of weeks. And I want to talk about some December extremes. In other words, those outliers on both ends of the spectrum. The warmest December on record, and this is looking at daytime high temperatures, was in 1889 with an average high of 49.3. Now, of course, the weather observation equipment back then might not have been quite as precise, but that still gives you an idea of just how exceptionally warm that December was. And it's a reminder that even with climate change, we still did see historically warm weather back before the climate change really started to exacerbate those emissions totals. And we still do see extreme cold even today. And that goes to show 1989, we saw an average low temperature of 8 degrees, making it the coldest December on record, at least in terms of those overnight lows. The wettest was in 1967 with almost 7 inches of liquid precipitation, and that includes both rainfall and melted snow. Certainly quite a bit of moisture in the atmosphere and in the soil from that December. The snowiest, 1951, with over 2 feet of snow accumulation, 25.5 inches during the month of December alone. So we're not officially in the start of winter yet, even though meteorological winter did start on the first day of December. Overall, it's been an exceptionally mild fall, and the month of November was 3.5 degrees above average. Even though we finally did get a little chill and taste of winter later on in the month, it really did not make up for that ground that started off with such a mild month. If you're watching this video on Friday, that means we have seen our 9th consecutive day that was colder than average. So despite the relatively mild November, the overall streak of days has pointed in the other direction, with that pendulum swinging towards colder than normal days. And we have logged 9 consecutive colder than average days, but that streak is likely to end towards the tail end of the weekend, as we do have some warmer weather in that WTOL 11 weather forecast. Over the month of November, we did see quite the ups and downs and the extremes in the temperature department. The coldest day of the month was 20 degrees, and that was the very last day of November. Subsequently, we have dropped below 20 in December so far. The warmest day of November, of course, not surprisingly, was early on in the month, November 5th, 76 degrees, providing a little late taste of summer. And it goes to show that November is a month of change, but so is December. As of Friday, our normal daytime high temperature is down to 42 degrees. Of course, we've been so cold lately, we really haven't even had too many 40s to speak of. By the end of December, our normal daytime high drops down to 36. So that's what you can expect going towards the Christmas holiday and New Year's as well. And the morning low, our normal morning low, is now down to 28 degrees. And that number is dropping in a hurry. By the end of December, going to be down to 23 as we're just a couple weeks away from the official start of winter. You felt that frigid cold Thursday into early Friday with that dose of Canadian Arctic air, but it is going to be very short-lived, at least this time around. Those frigid temperatures move off towards New England, and overall the long-range outlook actually is trending in a slightly milder direction. Of course, mild is relative this time of year, but I do expect above average temperatures, those orange and red colors over the Great Lakes region, extending back towards the Great Plains and also up towards New England. That indicates temperatures that are going to be above average. Now, in the 10-day forecast, you will see a couple of days near or above 50 degrees, and that is a sign that this little taste of winter is indeed short-lived. Now, it does seem like we are finally due for some wintry weather this season, and you'll want to subscribe to that Climate Friday newsletter as we share the latest with you. And as I mentioned, we're going to preview those white Christmas chances in the coming weeks. Stay tuned and be sure to check that free WTOL 11 weather app and subscribe at WTOL.com/email. I'll see you next week.
Well, winter is here. Sure feels like it outside, but is your car ready for it? If not, the experts at AAA say you need to get it prepared now.
Maya May has a look at what you need to look out for before you get into any of the heavy snowfall.
With winter weather heading our way, the experts here at AAA urge drivers not to put off the signs that their cars need maintenance. The AAA general manager here in Perrysburg says there is a simple maintenance checklist that all drivers should go through. He says drivers should make sure their tire pressure and tread are in good condition. He also says visibility is very important in the snow. Drivers should make sure they have a good pair of wiper blades, their headlights are working, and drivers are also encouraged to have their batteries and fluids checked. The experts tell me drivers can also ask themselves if they think they have everything they need if they might get stranded in the snow.
Stop neglecting your car. So just make sure you pay attention. If something doesn't feel right, if something doesn't sound right, there's a good chance it may not be right. Find a reputable, trusted, mechanic or service garage or something that you trust to look into those things and address them before they become a big issue.
AAA also offers free courtesy inspections, and they encourage you to come in sooner rather than later. For now, I'm Maya May reporting in Perrysburg for WTOL 11.
Less fuel, more money. That's the goal for some Toledo City Council members who say they want to switch the city's fleet of vehicles to electric.
Silver Barker talked to council members today about the idea and joins us live in studio. Silver, it sounds like you heard from at least one council member who's not on board yet. Who is that?
Well, Melissa and Jeff, I spoke with council member George Sarantu. He says he's not opposed to electric vehicles. He just thinks the timing is not right to try and make that change. Turning city vehicles electric. It's a plan on Toledo's agenda, but not on everyone's approval list.
Only 6.8% of EVs are sold in the United States. Clearly, we're seeing that consumers are not going to buy these EVs in the masses.
Councilmember George Sarantu says with so much uncertainty, it is not the time to start mandating city departments to purchase electric vehicles.
We just had a national election, and I think the message was quite clear for most voters, and that was that they really are tired of having EVs shoved down their throat.
Sarantu also says he worries the upfront cost would be more than traditional gasoline-powered and diesel-powered vehicles. Councilmember Nick Comives, who came up with the proposal, says pushing departments to replace old vehicles with electric vehicles would save money in the long run.
It doesn't require as much maintenance on electric vehicles, so we'll save money there. The federal government is offering a tax credit that we can take advantage of, and then by saving on the fuel costs through the life of the vehicle and having lower maintenance.
Next year's budget allocates more than $1 million in city vehicle replacements. City documents show the city is on track to waste about $500,000 on cars just idling around the city. However, Comive says he believes that amount is closer to $1 million. City Sustainability Manager Dana Rising works closely with Urban Beautification, one of the departments with the most gallons of fuels wasted so far this year.
A lot of times it will be just 10 minutes of idling, and that accrues over time. Sometimes it is somebody may be approached by a resident or something, and they end up, leaving their vehicle for a half hour at a time.
Rising says EVs would also automatically shut off after a certain amount of time for combustion engines.
But it's not really just about money, it's also about our air quality and what we're breathing in and our environment. So it's really a win-win across the board for us.
A win in question to others.
There's not a wide variety of EV vehicles available right now. So with this proposal, it would seem that we're going to have to take our city dollars, taxpayer dollars, and buy non-UAW vehicles. And I think that's a real slap in the face to the working men and women at our Jeep plant and our General Motors plant and the Ford plants that are in our region.
Now, today was the first reading of this ordinance. Comives tells me the city plans to vote on it in 2 weeks. In studio, Silver Barker, WTOL 11.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. You can catch any of the latest anytime on our WTOL 11 Plus streaming app, available on Roku and Fire TV. Be sure to also download the free WTOL 11 news and weather apps for everything happening in your community and beyond.